They actually came at me and said Kendrick Lamar has no memorable lines.
No.
Quotables. I want you to understand what that accusation is really doing because it's not a music critique. It's a confession. It's somebody telling on themselves in HD with no filter, loud enough for the whole comment section to hear. And instead of clapping back the easy way, I'm going to do something that's going to hit them way harder. I'm going to pull one line, 8 words from one verse on one song. And I'm going to show you how those 8 words contain an entire documentary. How they map a system of theft and displacement that has been running on Black communities for generations. How they connect Compton to Congress, Harlem to Hilton Head, Brooklyn to the ballot, and how that system is operating right now while we're sitting here having this conversation. You think you know what this video is about. You don't. Stay locked in. Before we get into it, like, subscribe, don't miss it, nah. The song is Hood Politics. The album is To Pimp a Butterfly. Kendrick Lamar, K. himself, released that record in March of 2015 on Top Dog Entertainment and Aftermath. And I already know somebody in the comments is gearing up to argue about album rankings. Save it.
Damn.
Is cold. Good Kid, Mad City is a classic. I don't need you to agree with me about where TPAB sits. I just need you to follow me for the next 20 minutes. Because Hood Politics, specifically, is the song you skip if you're not ready for it. It's the one that requires something from you. And at the 2-minute, 30 mark of verse 2, Kendrick Lamar drops 8 words that I have not been able to stop thinking about since the first time I really heard them. 8 words that became a documentary idea. 8 words that map something happening right now in your city, my city, every city where Black people built something worth taking. Let me take you through this song properly because people play Hood Politics on shuffle and think they understand it. They don't. Verse 2 opens with Kendrick saying he hopped out of the caddy, just got the call, lil homies telling him who the enemies are. Now on the surface, that's a street narrative. But look at the context it lives in. This song drops in 2015, about 2 years after Drake and J. Cole released the Jodeci Freestyle in December of 2013. If you weren't paying attention at the time, on that record, Drake named Kendrick Lamar as the hottest MC in the game. Out loud. On wax. That's a crown being placed on somebody's head whether they asked for it or not. And here's the thing about crowns. The moment somebody puts one on you, everybody around you starts recalibrating. Some people start riding harder for you. Some people start sharpening knives. And a whole lot of people start calling your phone telling you who your enemies are. That's what Kendrick is describing. Not a literal car. Not a literal call. The gravitational shift that happens when the culture decides you're the one. Then he says, and yo, I have rewound this specific bar more times than I can count. He says, talking about power, yeah, he's got a lot of it. The only one next to Snoop, who can push the button. Now, when I first really processed that line, I sat there for a second because that is not a regular rap flex. That's not, I got the most money, I got the most chains. What he's saying is, I have the kind of cultural authority that translates across every generation, every demographic, every lane of this thing. The streets respect it. The suburbs bump it. The academics study it. The elders acknowledge it. That is a specific, rare, dangerous kind of power, and Kendrick is naming it plainly. And then he says something that functions almost like a diary entry dropped in the middle of a banger. He says it's funny how one verse can mess up the whole game. He is talking about the Control verse. Big Sean's track from August 2013 where Kendrick got on the mic and called out basically every major rapper in the game by name, not as enemies, as competition he intended to surpass. That verse changed the temperature of hip-hop for months. It forced conversations. It put pressure on people. It made some artists step up and made others go quiet. And Kendrick is looking back at that, a couple years later, and putting it in the historical record. I did that. One verse. And I knew what it was going to do. Yo, that level of self-awareness in the middle of a political rap record is something people genuinely do not give enough credit for. He's not just making music. He is archiving his own impact in real time. That's a different kind of artist. So before we even get to the 8 words I actually came here to talk about, Hood Politics is already doing more work than most rappers' entire discographies. It's memoir. It's geopolitical analysis. It's chess notation. All at once. Here is what I need you to understand about the moment hood politics landed. March 2015. To pimp a butterfly drops. And the country is in a specific kind of pain that year. Ferguson happened in August 2014. The non-indictment in November. The Eric Garner non-indictment in December. Baltimore was still months away. The Black Lives Matter movement was in its early momentum phase, real energy, real urgency, but also a mainstream culture that was still figuring out whether to take it seriously or wait for it to go away. And into that moment, Kendrick drops an album that doesn't sound like any rap album anybody had heard in years. Jazz chords, funk bass, spoken word interludes, an entire conceptual arc about what it means to be black and brilliant and from Compton and alive in America. Not a trap album, not a club album, an album that required you to sit down and stay with it. Hood politics fit that cultural moment perfectly. But here's the thing that doesn't get discussed enough. It was not just of that moment. It saw past it. Because most of the 2014 to 2015 racial justice conversation, as it entered mainstream spaces, stayed focused on police brutality, which matters enormously. But Kendrick on hood politics is pulling the camera back further. He's not just talking about cops and protesters. He's talking about structural power. He's drawing a line from street-level gang dynamics all the way to Capitol Hill and saying, the psychology is identical. The tribalism is the same. The willingness to harm people who share your circumstances because of which team you rep, that doesn't stop at any income level or zip code. He saw that in 2015. That analysis is more accurate today than it was then. Political tribalism has gotten sharper, more vicious, more detached from actual policy outcomes for actual people. The flu he diagnosed has spread. That's not coincidence. That's what vision looks like. The idea arrives before the world catches up to it. And you don't realize how early somebody was until the world finally gets to where they were standing. Hood politics was standing somewhere most people still haven't reached. All right, this is where we slow everything down. At 2 minutes and 30 seconds into hood politics, Kendrick says, from Compton to Congress, set trippin' all around, ain't nothing new but a flu, new Democrats and Republicans. 8 words in that first clause. Let me take them apart one by one. From Compton to Congress. The word from is doing something architectural here. It's not Compton and Congress. It's not Compton or Congress. It's from, as in a direction of travel. As in, the same energy that moves through one moves into the other. It's a pipeline metaphor hidden inside a geography metaphor. He's saying the dysfunction doesn't stay in one place, it travels. It migrates. It scales. Compton is doing double duty. It's literal, Kendrick City, his home, the place that shaped him. But it's also representative of every predominantly black urban neighborhood that has been systematically underfunded, overpoliced, and then blamed for the conditions those policies created. Compton is a placeholder for a pattern. Congress is the destination. The place where the people who created and maintain those conditions sit. The place where the decisions about funding and policy and who gets resources actually get made. The place we've been trained to think of as separate from, elevated above, the street-level consequences it produces. And Kendrick puts them in the same breath. No separation. No hierarchy. Same sentence. Same system. Now, set tripping all around. For people who grew up outside of that specific cultural context, set tripping is gang terminology for when beef starts over territory or affiliation with no personal basis for conflict. You're not beefing with this person because they did something to you. You're beefing because of what set they're from, what color they wear, what block they claim. It's pure tribalism, loyalty to the group that overrides any individual logic or relationship. And Kendrick is saying that is exactly what the two-party system is doing. Democrats and Republicans are not engaged in good faith ideological debate about the best way to govern. They are set tripping. They are beefing over affiliation. They are hurting real people not because of principle, but because of which jersey they're wearing. And the people who actually hold power in both parties, like actual gang leadership, stay comfortable while everybody below them takes the losses. Then the second clause, ain't nothing new but a flu, new Democrats and Republicans. The flu metaphor is precise. A flu mutates. A new strain is still the same underlying virus. You can rename it, put a new face on it, run it under a new party platform. Same infection. Same mechanism of harm. Same result for the communities living underneath it. Publicans, that's his portmanteau. Democrats and Republicans collapsed into each other because functionally for the communities most affected by their policies, the distinction collapses. They're not the same party. But the set tripping? The tribalism? The prioritizing of team loyalty over the actual well-being of constituents? That part doesn't change with the letter after somebody's name. 8 words. That's a college-level political science lecture. That's an entire framework for understanding American partisan politics through a lens that most political commentators are too comfortable or too compromised to use. Kendrick Lamar put it in a rap song in 2015, and a generation of people who had been told politics wasn't for them suddenly had a language for what they were watching. That is a quotable line. That is arguably one of the most important lines in 21st century hip-hop for what it actually does in the world. And somebody came at me talking about no quotables. We're going to come back to why that critique exists and what it reveals. Now let me show you why this isn't just a clever lyric for me. Let me show you where these 8 words took me personally. I'm originally from Harlem, New York. And I relocated to Hilton Head Island, South Carolina, I want to say around 2006, 2007. And when I first got there, I'm seeing this beautiful island. Ocean. Palmetto trees. One road in, one road out unless you want to get in the water. And between what's swimming out there, trust me, you don't want to get in the water. But I started asking questions about the island's history, and what I found out stopped me cold. Before the bridge to Hilton Head was built, before outsiders had easy access, that island was roughly 90% black. Gullah Geechee people. Let me tell you who the Gullah Geechee are, because if your education didn't cover this, that's intentional, and we need to fix it right now. The Gullah Geechee are descendants of enslaved Africans, primarily from West and Central Africa, who were brought to the Sea Islands of South Carolina and Georgia. Because of the geographic isolation of those islands, surrounded by water, difficult to access, they were able to maintain cultural continuity that survived in ways it didn't survive on the mainland. Their language, their food traditions, their spiritual practices, their relationship to land and community. It survived. That's extraordinary given everything that was working against it. After the Civil War, when Union forces occupied the Sea Islands and plantation owners abandoned their land and fled, Gullah Geechee people purchased that land through state tax auctions. They built Mitchellville, which was the first self-governed town of formerly enslaved people in the entire country. Let that register. While the country was still actively debating whether black people were fully human, Gullah Geechee people in Hilton Head had already built a functioning self-governed municipality. They owned the land. They ran the town. They created the blueprint. Then, they built a bridge. And from the moment that bridge went up, the island started changing. The Marriott came. The golf resorts came. The vacation clubs. The gated communities. The development that turned a historically black island into one of the most exclusive beach resort destinations on the East Coast. And what happened to the people who built Mitchellville? Who purchased that land? Whose ancestors had been there for generations? Property taxes went up. Development pressure went up. And the population went down. The black population of Hilton Head Island is now estimated at somewhere between 6 and 7%. From 90% to 6%. In the span of a few decades. I'm standing on that island in 2006 and 2007 watching this in real time. And I'm having a full flashback to Harlem. Because I left Harlem watching the exact same movie play out on a different screen. The first $1.2 million condos started appearing on 110th Street. Then they crept to 112th. Then up St. Nicholas Avenue. And if you're a New Yorker, you know St. Nick around 145th, around the dirty 30th precinct, is not where anybody was expecting luxury development. But there it was. Then it spread into Brooklyn. Then Detroit. Then cities across the country with large black populations started seeing the same pattern run. They build the environment up, they price out the people who built it, and then they sell the culture those people created to the newcomers who displaced them. That is the playbook. And it runs everywhere. And here's where this becomes truly dark, because it's not just market forces. It's not just that's how development goes. There's a deed theft epidemic happening in American cities right now that is organized, sophisticated, and deliberately targeting Black homeownership specifically. I came across a family. Their house had been in their family for 60 years. 60 years. And they nearly lost it through a conservatorship fraud that originated out of Georgia. A conservatorship, which is a legal arrangement typically used to manage affairs for people who can't manage them themselves, was allegedly used by shell developers to sign off on a property sale without petitioning the state of New York, without the proper legal process, essentially banking on the fact that the family wouldn't have legal representation sophisticated enough to catch it. They went in front of multiple courts and were denied. They went to an appellate court, one of the highest available, and even there, when they asked for a stay on the eviction to allow them to argue their case, the judge told them they could argue their case, but the eviction was proceeding anyway. 60 years in that house. That's not a glitch. When the legal system produces those results consistently for people without resources, that's not accidental malfunction. That is the system functioning as designed for certain people. And Mayor Mamdani in New York is moving on this right now. He has announced the creation of New York City's first ever Office of Deed Theft Prevention. He has stated publicly that over the past 2 decades, more than 200,000 Black New Yorkers have left New York City. Not chose to leave. Not decided they preferred somewhere else. Were pushed out. Economically displaced. 200,000 people. That is a staggering number. That is a community being systematically dismantled, and nobody's calling it what it is. From Compton to Congress. Set tripping all around. It's the same virus in different hosts. The gang dynamics that trap people in Compton and South Central and Inglewood. The political tribalism that keeps Congress from addressing any of it. The development machine that prices people out of their own neighborhoods once those neighborhoods become desirable. The legal structures that make deed theft difficult to prosecute and easy to execute against people without resources. It all connects. It all runs on the same logic. And Kendrick Lamar put the whole architecture in 8 words in 2015. That's why this is my favorite line. Not because it's clever, because it's true. And because being true in that way, compressed, precise, portable, means it traveled. It got into people's heads. It gave them a frame. That is what art is supposed to do. Now I'm going to say what this is actually about. And some of you are going to feel this. The Kendrick has no quotables critique is not a music opinion. It's a symptom. It's the symptom of a specific kind of listening, the kind that is looking for lines that require nothing from you. Lines that hit on impact without any context, any knowledge, any lived experience. Lines that work like a screenshot, they're complete and consumable and shareable in isolation. And there's nothing wrong with that kind of line. Hip-hop is full of them, and they're part of what makes the genre great. But Kendrick is not primarily that kind of writer. He is a contextual writer. His lines are built on top of things, on top of history, on top of cultural knowledge, on top of political reality, on top of lived experience with systems that the line is actually describing. Strip away that foundation, and some of his lines don't land the same. That's not a weakness. That is the nature of writing that actually engages with ideas rather than just vibes. And here is the dark part. Here is the part one needs you to really hear. We are living through a deliberate, organized, well-funded attack on the capacity for exactly this kind of thinking. Public school funding has been systematically gutted for decades. Critical thinking as a skill, the ability to identify patterns, question sources, connect evidence, build arguments, has been quietly devalued in educational environments that prioritize standardized test performance over genuine intellectual development. And in recent years, the hostility toward anything that could be called intellectualism has moved from subtext to main text. People are being told out loud that education is indoctrination, that curiosity is elitism, that making connections between disparate systems is conspiracy thinking. You want to know why? Historically, consistently, across every society that has ever tried to exploit a large population, the first move is always to limit access to knowledge, limit access to land, limit access to legal recourse, limit access to capital, and make sure the people being exploited are too busy surviving to ask structural questions about why they're in the position of having to survive so hard. Dumber people are, in fact, easier to manage. That's not a hot take. That is a documented historical observation. And the defunding of every institution that exists to build critical capacity in people, that is not happening by accident. So when an artist like Kendrick Lamar writes a line that requires critical thinking to access, that requires you to know what set tripping means and what Congress does and how development works and what Gullah Geechee history is and how those things connect, the people who can't access it are not going to say, I don't have the context yet. They're going to say, that line doesn't work. That is the anti-intellectual reflex in action, in real time, in your comment section. And what I'm telling you is that the line works. It has been working for 10 years. It will keep working. And the proof isn't me saying it. The proof is that I took it and built a documentary concept out of it. The documentary is called From Harlem to Hilton Head. And the concept is exactly what it sounds like, tracing the same system of displacement, land theft, and community erasure from the Gullah Geechee Sea Islands to Harlem, from Harlem to Brooklyn, from Brooklyn to Detroit, from Detroit to Compton, from Compton to wherever it's currently landing. Talking to elders, to historians, to community organizers, to the families fighting deed theft right now, to the activists, to the people who watch their neighborhoods transform and their communities scatter. I've been carrying this idea for years. I've been doing content since 2010. A visionary I came across put it plainly. The better your vision, the longer you wait, because the idea shows up before the world is ready to receive it. And you have to be financially and emotionally prepared to hold it until the moment opens. I'm holding it. And the moment is getting closer every day because the story isn't getting less relevant. It's getting more urgent. The deed theft is accelerating. The displacement is accelerating. The evidence is accumulating. And the people who have been living this story deserve to see it told with the care and the precision and the cultural grounding that it actually requires. That's what From Harlem to Hilton Head is. And it started with a man from Compton who put 8 words in a rap song and trusted that somebody would be listening closely enough to catch what he was doing. That is why you cannot tell me Kendrick Lamar doesn't have quotable lines. Not because I want to win an argument, because the line built something. It moved through me and produced a vision that I am going to make real. Can you say that about most things you've heard? Most lines you've seen on a graphic card floating through your timeline? I didn't think so. Let me tell you what I see coming. And I want you to mark this, because I'm not speculating. I'm reading a pattern that's been running long enough to project forward. Hood politics is going to keep getting more cited, more referenced, more relevant with every passing year. That song is going to outlive most of what's on the charts right now. Not because nostalgia, because it was built on a structural observation about how power operates, and that structure hasn't changed. If anything, it's gotten more visible, more brazen. The set tripping in Congress is more explicit than it was in 2015. The displacement in American cities is more documented. The deed theft crisis now has mayoral offices dedicated to addressing it. The Gullah Geechee story is getting more mainstream coverage as people reckon with the history they were never taught. Every single trend line points toward hood politics becoming more important, not less. A decade from now, music historians and cultural scholars are going to point to that song as one of the clearest early articulations of what happened to American cities in the 21st century. Mark it. As for the documentary, I want to be honest with you. I don't have a production deal. I don't have a crew on standby. What I have is the vision, the treatment, the through line, the relationships, and the conviction that this story needs to exist. I know the interviews I want to capture. I know the locations. I know the narrative spine. And I know that the right collaborator, the right producer, the right filmmaker, the right funding source is going to see this and understand immediately why it matters. If that person is in this audience, you know where to find me. And for everyone else, here's where I land. The act of paying attention is not passive. In a cultural moment specifically designed to overwhelm your attention, fragment your focus, and flood your information environment with noise, choosing to sit with something, go deep on it, follow where it leads, that is a form of resistance. Listening to hood politics the way it deserves to be listened to is an act. Taking a line like From Compton to Congress seriously enough to chase it into history books, into neighborhood politics, into legal documents, into your own memory of where you're from and what you watched happen there. That's not just being a fan. That's being the kind of person this system genuinely does not want you to be. Be that person. From Compton to Congress. From Harlem to Hilton Head. Set tripping all around. Ain't nothing new but a flu. And they've been spreading it for a very long time. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed uncovering the real story, smash that like button and hit subscribe so you never miss when we expose what everyone else is too scared to say. Ring that bell for notifications. And if you want more truth bombs like this, click on one of these videos next. Trust me, you'll want to see what we found.